This morning on Lover Plus.
Well, to everything under the sun, there is a time and a season. And this is the time for this morning show, and this is the season of springtime. Great to have you join us. My name is Henry Williams. Fantastic day, and really I'm enjoying it already.
So joining us on set this morning to discuss it, like I did say, we're looking at Kenya's historic election annulment, the lessons and the implications for Africa. And joining us, we have Nnamdi Abana, who is a political scientist and a political affairs analyst. He also has, an online news publication, an online news website, and he's here this morning. Good morning.
Good morning,
and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
It's a pleasure having you here. Thank you.
Firstly, congratulations. Happy New Month.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's get straight to it. Kenya's historic election annulment. When you got the news, what was your reaction?
It's a landmark judgment given by the Kenyan judiciary. It has never happened before in Africa.
Unprecedented.
It is unprecedented. That is the word. It is unprecedented. And what that portends for the future of Africa is that you can't, the power of incumbency can be tampered with. For the mere fact that you are the president, the incumbent president, that doesn't mean that you have the ability and the rights to control the institutions of the state. Yes, you call the shot. Yes, it is your government. In Africa, it is believed that when you are in power, you should be in control of all the structures of the state, which includes the judiciary. Yeah. And that has been a major challenge in African politics. We find executives, incumbent presidents, and regional heads taking over the affairs of and influencing the judiciary to give judgment in their favor and to thwart the dispensation of justice. But this time around in Kenya, that jinx has been broken. This is a landmark judgment. It means that democracy is coming to maturity. And it also goes a long way to tell us that Africa is transcending the parochial level of political practice to an advanced level. We have moved from the parochial stage. Now the citizens are getting involved. Now the institutions of the state, they are coming alive to their responsibilities. They are saying no to electoral malpractices. They are saying no to election irregularities. They want the right thing to be done, not minding whose ox is God. So that is what is happening in Kenya. And in some other African countries, we saw what happened in Nigeria. For the first time, an incumbent was defeated, and there was a peaceful transmission of power from the ruling party to the opposition party. So right now in Nigeria, the opposition party used to be the opposition party. They are now the ruling party. So that makes democracy interesting. It tells those at the seat of power, look, if you don't work, if you don't meet the needs of the masses, you're going to be booted out.
Okay. What was you expecting the phone lines? What was you expecting to get connected to our people in Kenya? Yeah. Let me ask you this. What does this annulment now, this judgment, particularly what does this portend for Nigeria? Especially in a case where you see two states, same scenario, different judgments.
Well, that's
same scenario.
Yes.
Same scenario, two states, same scenario, but different judgments.
Yeah. When you have such a scenario where you have two states having the same issues and having divergent, kind of judgment, it is obvious that one state, the dispensation of justice in a state is right, and then the dispensation of justice in another state is wrong. Because the truth about it is this: the judiciary, we have corrupt elements in the judiciary. Likewise, at the higher echelon, that is those at the bench.
Okay.
Yes, so it is expected that at times such judgments will come. And when such judgment comes, you have to take it to a higher court. That is where you now appeal.
Well, I'm talking about the Supreme Court.
Okay, no, the Supreme Court, rarely. Most times, because it's not just a judge. Okay. You have, like the Kenyan election, like they have six of them. Okay. 2 were in favor, 4 were in favor, 4 were against, in favor of the re-election of the annulment. The annulment, yes, while 2 were against. Okay. So you can see here, democracy also plays in. The judgment of 4 justices holds sway against the 2. So, you know, that diffuses or that neutralizes the question of wrong dispensation of justice. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Let's look at the response of President Kenyatta. You know, after the ruling, obviously he wasn't happy, but some of the statements that he made later on when he was speaking to his supporters, you know, what does that tell?
The statement of Kenyatta was unfortunate. A leader shouldn't make such volatile, such, you know, grave statements. You know, Kenya is a volatile country. If you check the political antecedents of Kenya, you will see that they've had quite a number of political violence in previous elections. In 2003, they had over 6,000 displaced people, lots of people killed. This particular election is being recorded by some civil society group that over 27 people died. Yes. And prior to the election, the electoral commissioner in charge of the IT infrastructure and so on was murdered. You know, so Kenya is very volatile. If you observed, since Obama handed over to President Trump, he's been out of the political scene. He's not been making statements about the United States or international affairs. But this time around, because of the election and the volatile nature of the Kenyan election, Obama had to come out to appeal to the hearts and the minds of the leaders of Kenya, both the opposition and the ruling party. Yes. He cautioned them and told them to, you know, embrace the outcome of the election, no controversies, no violence, you know. So Kenya is a volatile country. So for the president to have made such a statement, it is irresponsible of him.
The statement he made was he accused the judiciary of being crooks or something like that.
Yeah, why should he accuse?
Are you surprised?
I'm not really surprised because here in Africa, once the judgment is not in your favor, you go about
becomes
ranting, you know. So, but for a president of his status, again, not just a president of his status, he studied abroad in the United States, so he must have learned about democracy, and he's been on ground in the United States to see how this thing works. But it's unfortunate that he is making this kind of inciting comments. Mind you, they'll make such inciting comments and still say, we advise our members to be calm. Meanwhile, you've already stirred up the you know, you've sown the seed.
You know, he also said that now that the election has been annulled, that he's back to being the president and not the president-elect. So he said that the judges should now know that they are dealing with an incumbent president. That sounds like a veiled threat.
Well, it's an empty threat. It's an empty threat. He's just trying to, I don't want to use the description of a drowning man, okay? But it's an empty threat. All he needs to do is to advise the people to be calm, advise them to be calm, and, you know, since they have 60 more days, he should intensify on his campaign. Then on those, you know, the regions where he didn't do so well, based on the outcome of the vote, he should,
go there.
You know, go there and marshal out his plans, convince them. That is what I expect him to do. Right now, Odinga will take advantage of his speech, and he'll start saying that, hey, this guy is not a Democrat, he's against the rule of law, the highest court in the land gave a judgment, and he is challenging it, showing that he's not a true Democrat. That is what is going to happen now. And, you know, the international community, they are watching. And based on his statement, if he eventually loses the election and violence breaks out, the world is going to hold him responsible.
For that.
And if care is not taken, he might be extradited. He'll be sent packing from his country, just like in other African nations. Nobody is going to tolerate any nonsense this time around in Africa. Africa has come of age, and Africa is ready to take the bull by the horn to ensure that there is peace and tranquility in the region. In every election, there are, you know, different, the electorate, they consider different things. Unfortunately, in Africa, ethnic politics hold sway, which is very unfortunate. And I would like to say this, it is wrong to vote according to, you know, ethnic lines. You vote based on merit.
On merit.
What is this guy going to bring on the table? How is he going to advance our future? How is he going to turn our country around? That should be the focus of every president. You don't play on ethnic sentiment. In that regard, that is where we still have some elements of parochial political culture in the African system, where ethnic sentiments has, you know, seems to have gained the ascendancy, and that is what has, you know, generated lots of electoral violence in Africa. So what I expect the leaders to do is to play down on ethnic campaigns.
Sentiments, yes.
Okay, if you get to Kenya, you see, oh, this is this ethnic stronghold. This is this ethnic stronghold. If you make certain comments in this area, you know, you could be killed.
Let me ask you this: the political rivalry in Kenya is very rife.
Yeah.
And when the election was held, we had some UN observers who described the election as free and fair. Peaceful, free and fair. And contrary to what they said, the election was annulled. Will you describe the annulment of the election as a contradiction of the words peaceful, free and fair?
Yes, it's a big contradiction, and we shouldn't be making this mistake of ascribing perfection to the UN, to the United States or the UN, or, you know, foreign observers. Yes, they are human beings and they can make mistakes.
Yeah, but if I may, you know, when they were asked this same question, you know, one of the observer heads actually said that their statement refers to the conduct of the election only, from what they could see in terms of, you know, attendance, in terms of the way that the people came out to vote, in terms of the orderliness, in terms of the way that they conducted themselves, that whatever that happened later on, you know, was another matter entirely, that they were there merely to observe the conduct. And
they are being defensive.
Okay.
When you are sent to a country...
Speaking with two sides of the mouth.
Yes, when you are sent to a country to observe an election, election is a process. You have to go through all the processes and ensure that you have accurate information about the election. Because what they've just done is to deceive the world, the masses, by declaring that the election was peaceful, free, and fair. Meanwhile, that argument or that report has been punctured. It has been punctured. Okay. Kenyatta got 54% of the votes. Odinga got 44%. What about the I think about 1.3 million votes that are unaccounted for? After the vote count, the vote cast, there is a document that is meant to be submitted online to the electoral body.
Yes.
They said the electoral machine, the device, this electronic voting system in Africa, it failed. They were now using SMS to transmit the results. Okay? Then after that, it is expected, since you could not post it online as on the result, the form, why couldn't you transmit it physically? That was not done. That was not done. Only for the Electoral Commission to come out with because of course allegations were rife, people were demonstrating, the international community became conscious, and they were asking what is happening in Kenya. We don't want Kenya to boil, and so on and so forth. The forms they came up with didn't have watermarks. It didn't have serial number. So another question is, how were they able to produce those forms that are not authentic? You read various analyses, New York Times, and you'll be able to have a holistic view of what really transpired. So that was why the Chief Justice said, no, this is wrong. The election is full of irregularities. It's full of irregularities. If the forms could not be transmitted, where are the forms? And if you allow Kenyatta to ascend to the office of the president without resolving these irregularities, that will amount to injustice. And in the previous elections, the judiciary, they've been accused of aiding and abetting injustice by declaring the wrong candidate as winner.
Like in favor of the incumbent, mostly.
And the judge is a very smart man. He didn't accuse Kenyatta of any wrongdoing.
Especially somebody who comes from his base.
Yeah, he didn't accuse him of any wrongdoing. Rather, he heaped the blame on the Independent National and Boundary Commission.
Yes.
That's their own INEC.
Yes.
Boundary, So it's they really need to. The electoral body needs to sit up, especially now that they are going to conduct another election. And I would like to point out that this election, this second phase, or this re-election, will cost them $1 billion US.
Whoa.
1 billion, you see, if they had done the right thing, that 1 billion would have gone into the development of Kenya.
Yes.
And there are lots of undeveloped areas in Kenya, those suffering. In fact,
so many
those people in the slums, they are actually the ones that are coming out to demonstrate against the incumbent president, calling for a change, because they believe that they've been marginalized, and the government, that they are yet to deliver the dividends of democracy to them. So that's why most of them are protesting, clamoring for change, So in those areas, they are happy with the judgment, because they believe that right now that they have a chance.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they need a change.
Yeah, and they need a positive change.
Okay.
Change was a positive, where I'm going to.
The lessons now for Nigeria especially, well, for Africa as a whole, but also for Nigeria, which is where we are. We're looking at judiciary as stepping up their game. With what has happened in the judiciary in Nigeria lately, with all the accusations and all of that, some judges being accused of impropriety and all of that. That's on the one hand. Then you have the election management body, which is INEC in this case. A lot of the election management bodies in Africa, they've always been accused of being partisan to the incumbents, naturally having been set up by and funded by the incumbents. So naturally, it is expected that whatever they do, their loyalty must exactly.
It takes the tune.
Exactly. So from what has happened here, how do you connect to?
It is you know, or I don't know whether to say unfortunately or fortunately, but the contradiction inherent in the name, most of them, like, they don't want to answer National Electoral Commission or National Electoral and Boundary Commission. They like to add that word independent when they are not independent. Why should the federal government be funding an electoral body?
That already
defeats,
compromises
you know, because in most cases, you must, you know, dance according to the tune of the paymaster. Except when you have a never say die leader, I mean, INEC chairman, who is ready to die on the job by ensuring that the right results, you know, are transmitted. It has to do with someone that has personal, as in integrity, discipline, upright, a never say die attitude. Someone who is ready to drop his resignation letter and say, no, I won't continue, if you decide to thwart and, you know, and influence the process.
Okay.
So, in Africa, when appointing electoral chairmen, their pedigree should also come to play. And the citizens should also speak out. When the wrong person is appointed, there should be a public outcry. When there is a public outcry, the government of the day will be forced to remove the person. It happened recently in Nigeria, though not some people were nominated as ministers and for the ministerial office and some federal position. But there was a public outcry on the internet that these guys are corrupt. They have cases of corruption hanging on their neck. Why did you appoint them?
Yes.
That even goes a long way to question the screening process
itself. Yes.
And eventually their names were, they pulled out their names from the list. That is the way to go. So citizens should also come alive to their responsibilities by ensuring that the right thing is done. When a wrong person, somebody who doesn't have a good track record, is appointed as the electoral chairman, it is our responsibility, civic responsibility, to come out and say, no, this is wrong. The right person has to be there, and this man shouldn't be here. You now cite cases. On a certain date, on this certain occasion, this man did X, Y, Z. He has integrity issues, and he shouldn't continue. If any individual has integrity issues, that person should not be a leader. Because once you put him there, corruption is going to fester like cancer. It will spread. And not just at the center, it will spread at the component units. Because what it's going to do is to set up structures
that will
in all the regions, in all the states. And when such structures are set up, rigging becomes systemic, you know? It becomes systemic. So in Africa, we have to look at the appointment, the citizens. They should be alive, they should be politically active, they should be able to read in between the lines to know when, you know, the government is about to play, you know, some pranks.
Absolutely.
Yes, and then the judiciary too.
Absolutely.
They're also the watchdog.
Yeah.
In Africa, we have the culture of recycling politicians, or especially old politicians that should be serving as elders, statesmen. At 72, he should be advising other upcoming politicians in his political party. He should be, you know, laying the cards on the table. This is the way to go. This is what to do. But for him to be involved at his age, I don't think that is right. The younger generation should be given the opportunity, you know, to rule. Then the young generation should also seize the opportunity. They shouldn't wait to be given.
Yes.
They should get involved in the process.
Right away.
We shouldn't be having people at the age of 70, you know, are they going to come up with new ideas? What? We need young people of the digital age to get there and change things, you know, not men that are advanced. I respect them. They should advise us. They should leave the political scene for the younger generation, you know, to participate in. That's my take on it.
Okay. All right, we've come, well, for now, because I'm sure this is going to be discussed severally for the next couple of days, while we're also watching to see what is going to happen in Kenya in terms of campaigning again ahead of the elections and the eventual election as well, and of course the outcome. Any projections for that election?
Yes, what we are going to see right now is that the opposition is going to hinge on this judgment of irregularities, electoral irregularities, and they are going to say that the previous elections, they will lend credence to the defects of the previous elections. They will say, oh, this has been happening for a long time, and this is the time to break that jinx, you know. And it also goes a long way to affect the integrity of the incumbent president, and then the institution of the electoral institution in Kenya. So a lot is going to play out. Over the news media in Kenya, people are going to be advised to defend their votes. Then the INEC, the electoral body, is going to ensure that there is no malfunctioning of their gadgets. They have to get everything right this time around. And I also believe that international observers, international bodies, they are going to come in to lend in their support, especially in the area of technology, to ensure that it does not fail.
Absolutely. Okay, well, we will halt the discussion for this time, but we did have an interesting one, and we did have Nnamdi Abana, who is a political scientist as well as a political affairs analyst, and he also champions an online news publication, you know, very active online. Thank you so much for coming on today's program.